I believe that if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing. And I live my life that way very boldly. We have to stop thinking and rethinking and start doing and acting. Rejection is always better than regret. And no matter how much you manifest, at the end of the day, if there's no action behind it, it's never going to happen.
What does it mean to be bold? How do you define your character? How do you forge your character? And how do you build the life that you're after? Today, I'm joined by a incredible human who's doing so much when it comes to impact on the personal development front, advocating for Israel, advocating for living your best life, and giving you a formula, sharing her own vulnerability to help you level up yours. And I have been looking forward to this interview for a minute. Please welcome the author, keynote speaker, the entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, and so much more, Miss Jennifer Cohen. How are you today?
Oh, what a nice intro. I'm doing okay. How are you, Jonathan? Thanks for having me.
Well, it's awesome to have you here. I really enjoyed the book. I I can't even like begin to express how cool it's been to see the trajectory of your content, of your journey, the vulnerability of it in particular, how you've shared your worst experiences in hopes that other people can learn from them. That's led even to a TED Talk with millions and millions of views. How do you compartmentalize your content?
I think what my content or what I do is I'm just pretty much like what you see is what you get. I kind of just throw a lot of stuff up. It's not very curated. It's just what's happening in my life, what's going on in the day. And I don't consider myself an expert or a guru. I believe I'm just really somebody who's just trying to tell people what's worked for me, what hasn't, what's kind of kept me on point to be the best version of myself. And I've been kind of like I've been like a human guinea pig for trial and an error and trial and error. And I just kind of try to give people that information and like whatever's happening in my life. Like you were mentioning the Israel thing, like to me, that has taken on a whole life of its own for me. And I've become like an accidental activist, right? Like full-time activist because it's so important for me to spread the word of what is happening, the misinformation, the lack of other Jewish influencers. And what I mean by that is like just people who are Jewish who have influence in any capacity to speak out. I believe that if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing. And I've lived my life that way very boldly, as you would say. And so I just am who I am. And it's not really compartmentalized at all. It's just what it is basically a whole like vomit, so to speak, of everything out there. Right. So that's what it is.
One of the things that I left out is that you're also a podcaster with millions of downloads as well, having interviewed entrepreneurs, activists, professors, athletes, creators, and it just spans the gamut. One of the things, particularly from your book, that I enjoyed was, and it helped me think about things differently in my own life, where I was being too smart for my own good.
Yeah.
When you're really smart, you're great at predicting all the negative outcomes. I came across that and I was like, hmm, I'm giving myself too many reasons why I can't do the thing. How has that particular sentiment played a role in your life?
Well, I do believe that boldness is a much stronger indicator to success than intelligence. I think that it's not the people that have the highest, necessarily the highest IQ or academic grade, but it's the people who actually are bold and who don't overthink every action. So a lot of the people I grew up with and know in business and what have you, they kind of got capped. The smartest people, you would think that these people were going to be the most successful, the most this, the best, and they're kind of like they kind of flatlined pretty early because they were their own worst enemies, right? Like they overthought to analysis paralysis. They couldn't make a decision. They didn't think they had the skill set. They went back to school to get a better skill set. They tried to align with the better person because that person wasn't smart enough. When the reality is, like, everything that I've seen, that people who've actually gotten to, like, really who've broken the or, like, kind of, like, crashed the ceilings are people who were just super bold, who believed in themselves just a little bit more than somebody else and didn't give up. They were more tenacious, they were more persistent, they didn't overthink everything. They kind of didn't allow their not knowing or their self-doubt or their ideology of what they've done before to stop them from attempting something else. To me, I believe that we can be our own worst enemies, and we technically are if we allow that to be. So, and not, we have to stop thinking and rethinking and start doing and acting. I always say to people, like, even when you are down, do it anyway. When you're tired, do it anyway. When you are depressed, do it anyway. Like, do it anyway. Not to sound like Nike, but the truth is, like, that is how you move the needle. That is how that you kind of like push the ball forward. It's not from just an exorbitant amount of knowledge. In fact, actually, I believe that naivety is a superpower. And I talk about this in the book too, is that what we don't know is actually better because then, like, we're free to kind of figure things out and, like, kind of create a whole new system for how it worked before and, like, a whole new, like, widget, so to speak. If you knew how hard it was to actually have, let's say, a successful podcast, right? People wouldn't really do it, right? But if people who are looking at this medium right now, and they're like, "Oh, right, you just like talk into a microphone and press play. All right, I can do it." Like, so, like, the barrier to entry, yeah, it seems pretty easy, right? Like, anybody, any monkey can do that. But, like, and people do it. And then, like, once you get in, and by the way, I was one of those monkeys. And then as you do it, you kind of realize, oh wait, I'm basically talking to myself. Nobody's paying attention. How am I going to, like, how do I, like, make this a successful podcast? Where are my guests going to come from? How do I book guests? How do I coordinate the schedules of the guests? And wait, like, if you're doing it online, it kind of sounds like shit. So, like, maybe the audio should be better. Maybe the visual should be better. And, like, it keeps on going from there, right? But you don't think about these things until you're in the weeds and in it. I guess that's why I'm saying it. Like, sometimes, like, when you don't, if I knew how much work, effort, time, money it was going to cost and do, right? For me to be a successful podcaster, I would never in a million years have taken on this thing, right? And so now I'm in it. I'm in it to win it now, right? Like, I've invested a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of, like, people, all the things. And so I learned it as I went. I didn't interview 97 people who had a podcast first to find out every weed and nuance of how they did it. I just kind of, like, went, you know what? I'll do it like everybody else. And then it kind of just, you know, went from there. If I can tell anybody anything, it would be like, don't overthink your thing. If you have interest in it, if it seems kind of like cool to you or like something that you may be, good at or whatever, like, give it a shot. You'll figure it out pretty quickly if it's not for you. And the reality is, if you want to be successful at anything, there's nothing that's ever going to take the place of good old fashioned hard work. Period. End of story.
I mean, you said it wonderfully now, but that whole premise that you outline also, boldness is a skill. And like anything, you got to practice those skills in order to develop those skills. And you tell a few great stories. There's one that I want to harp on just because I want to share a story too. Obviously, we know the success of the podcast, but despite the success of the podcast and everything that you write in your book about boldness, you still took a moment to share a moment of vulnerability when you had the opportunity to pitch your dream guest live one on one in a restaurant in LA, Mark Wahlberg. Despite being surrounded by your friends and family, despite having this incredible, successful podcast, all these incredible ventures you have under your belt, you've achieved the mindset, you're writing a book about the mindset, and you've done all the things, you don't end up pitching Wahlberg. And that made me think of my January experience where I don't know if you know who Drew Rosenhaus is. Big time NFL agent, probably the number one agent in the whole NFL by just salary and that he represents and gravity of player, Terrell Owens, like list goes on. at the peak of his career. So I once saw an HBO spot on him, learned about who he was, discovered he's like a Jewish lawyer, like cool guy, did the deep dive and got super curious. It's like the day after New Year's or the day of New Year's Day in Miami Juice, and I see him pitching some college player, some football player. I don't know. I'm a big basketball guy, not football. I'm like with my wife, and I tell her, I was like, oh my gosh, Drew Rosenhaus. I waited out until he finished the meeting, and the entire time. In that moment, I realized like it's so easy to go down the rabbit hole and hate on yourself and have that negative self talk just crushing like every side of your head. And I realized that there's a ruthlessness and a willingness for all the top of anyone in their field that they go about life just on a different kind of level. So I've taken that kind of energy and channeled it throughout this year, and it's definitely bringing me some positive vibes. But I'm curious from your perspective, how is that experience since having the opportunity to pitch Mark Wahlberg? How have you taken that experience and channeled it since?
I have a principle that I really believe in really wholeheartedly, which is rejection is always better than regret. You know, with rejection, yeah, does the sting, does it bother you for a moment, maybe a few hours, even a week, a month? But eventually you get over it, right? Rejection's hard, but regret lives with you forever. Regret, you're going to feel it. It's a guttural feeling. And I never want want to look back on something and have that, I coulda, I shoulda. I think that they say that when people are on their deathbed, the biggest thing that people think about is not the things that they have done. It's the things that they haven't done. And it's basically potential unused or things that they shoulda and coulda done differently. And so I always think about that moving forward. And, you know, I kick my till this day, by the way, that happened like years ago where Mark Wahlberg was literally like 3 feet from me. Not only that, staring at me, like eye caught, like eyes locked. And instead of me being like smiling, I got so nervous and I just looked away. And so I think that a lesson to be learned is no matter how successful you are, no matter what you've done in the past, no matter whatever your situation is, we'll always have these moments of weakness or self doubt, and fear of failing and fear of rejection. That's human nature. No matter who you are in the world, that's a normal feeling. You have to recognize that, realize it, and then move past it, and not only recognize it but do it anyway. And the thing that also I wanted to also point out is that why I wrote a book on boldness and why I did a talk on boldness is because I really believe that boldness is a true skill that you can get better at. You know, people always ask me, like, how did you do that? Like, how did you ask for that? Or, like, how did you get that guest on your podcast? How did you get that business deal? How did you get that job opportunity? And like the answer is always the same. It's that I asked. It's like really simple, not rocket science that people think. It's like I actually asked. Most people don't even make an attempt. The truth is, yeah, you may not get most of them. You may get almost none, but you just need one. You need one to take you on a different path, to open a different door, to put you on a different trajectory. But if you don't even do that, and the idea behind the book is you can practice the skill of being bold because boldness is a skill. So don't tell me, oh, I wasn't born like that. You were born that way, Jennifer, and I'm just not that way. Okay, you may not be that way. And I may have been born like maybe more bold than you, but you can definitely take your 2 out of 10 and like raise it to a 5 out of 10 or maybe a 6 out of 10 with some practice, right? If you practice the skill of boldness, which is, making these ten attempts that I talk about, the 10% target mindset, like starting on these little bold moves. Guess what? Everything in life is accumulative. Something may seem like a really small thing, but if you do that thing and stack it over time, that like small thing or small things really kind of accumulate to something big. So if I can say anything, don't count yourself out. I think that it's a big mistake and that you would be surprised if with you just asking how much further and things you will get by something such an easy thing to kind of integrate into your life.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Inspired. My name is Jonathan Cohen, and I have a quick favor to ask you. If you're getting any value out of this content, please take a second to subscribe to the channel. You help us reach more people, and you can also stay up to date with all the latest content coming your way. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll catch you in the episode. I really admired the willingness to share it and the empathy that you showed for yourself in sharing it, and was like, even while I'm writing this book, I'm still telling you this story. I thought it was like the coolest thing, like the epitome of it. Like you said, no matter how successful you get, like you're still going to have those moments, and you got to find ways to get yourself through those moments. And I think you give more examples of like ordering off the menu, right? Like being able to ask for things that aren't there and see if they'll accommodate. Because if you practice asking for the little things, you'll get good at asking the big things.
Wow, you did read my book.
I read it, I did my research.
That's 100. I like that, Jonathan, because this is kind of part of it, right? Like people don't do the work and then they wonder why they're not successful. A friend of mine always says, don't be upset about the thing you didn't get by the work you didn't do. You know, don't be upset by, yeah, the thing you didn't get by the work you didn't do. People accept, I think a lot of times, especially the younger generation now, is that things should come easy. You know, they don't have to put in the hours of work. They look at social media too much, and everybody looks rich. Everybody has a plane. Everyone has a Lamborghini. People don't understand that that's not real life. But real life requires real work. And no matter how much you manifest and you think about manifesting, at the end of the day, if there's no action behind it, it's never going to happen unless you were born to a king or a queen or like a very rich real estate development family. I'm sorry to break it to you, but that's the way it is.
I mean, it's also respect for your time, right? Like, I'm not going to show up here unprepared. I think when someone who's put in as much effort and as many ventures and seen success across multiple industries, like there's something to be learned from that. And also for the audience, right? You want to make sure that you're respecting their attention as well. All the work that you're doing, you recently just interviewed the president of Israel. You were recently in Israel. What was that experience like?
Well, I think that when I went to Israel, first of all, to interview the president was a massive honor, and it's a surreal experience when you walk into the president's home and you get to sit with someone. And for me, anyway, of that caliber, it was just super surreal, and um, being in Israel, it was so impactful. Interviewing the president, very impactful, all of it. And I think that what's so interesting, what I noticed in general, is that Israelis have such a spirit, such a like zest for life that no matter what happens, the resilience that they've shown and they've always shown is bar none to anything else I've ever seen. To be like in the presence of that was really moving and important for me. And I think what you said, like one of the things, like I said at the beginning, is really important for me is to really shed light on the misinformation out there. Like I feel a lot of us are in an echo chamber who are very supportive of Israel. We're talking to ourselves because people are getting their information from TikTok. The younger generation doesn't even like 50% of people don't even believe the Holocaust even existed. These numbers are atrocious. I feel like we're losing in numbers. And my job, I've made it my job. No one's giving me the job. I'm volunteering to if I can just show the light or show people who otherwise wouldn't know, if I can change five people's minds, or at least show them the truth, then I've done something. And I think people think that they don't have the impact because they don't have a huge platform. But like, people can have 100 people following them or two people following them. It's kind of the same as everything else I talk about in life, right? Like, it starts small, right? It's like you can start with a little and have a huge impact and a cumulative effect, right? And like I said, I just think it's very, very sad that more people are not involved and are not understanding the severity of what's happening.
When it first happened, I mean, you immediately took action, took to your platform and started sharing information, started sharing stories, interviewing a lot of high profile activists, and bringing on and having the conversation, wanting to see where your blind spots are, and also educating the your audience, who I imagine comes from all over the world.
By the way, I also wasn't somebody who was in the echo chamber before, right? Like, I was someone I so happened to be Jewish, but I wasn't like out there advocating for Jews around the world or anti Semitism or Israel. Like, that wasn't what I was doing. And I didn't have all the information myself. And so it was important for me to talk to people. I had Musab on here, who was the son of Hamas, on my podcast. I had talked to him for hours. And he's the son of a Hamas leader who broke down exactly how they're indoctrinating people, how they indoctrinated him, and how they're like spreading the information and the lies. If anyone wants to hear it, they should listen to my podcast in that episode, because it was so interesting. Like, I'm fascinated by him, but like, I don't know everything. Don't just listen to me. I think that like people should be much more discerning on where they're getting information from, and take the initiative just to know facts from fiction and lies.
And that's a really hard thing to do in this day and age, to validate
Yeah.
and to confirm everything that is thrown at us, from like fake news to misinformation
Hmm.
to AI based content. Like, it's never been harder. How are you educating your audience on how to validate and verify their information?
With Israel or just with everything?
I guess Israel would be a good example, but we could widen the scope to everything.
I think what I do is I invite people on who have way more knowledge, experience, education on the topic than I do, and then ask them questions. I don't think I'm an authority by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not. I'm just a vessel of someone asking questions that I think other people who maybe want to know the same answers to people who are smarter than I am or who have the answers that I don't have. That's all. I had this guy named Nate Buzz on, who is like a born again Christian, who is not Jewish again, and who is super learned and knowledge on what history is. He's not Jewish, and I wanted to get his perspective on why he's so pro Israel, because I thought that was fascinating. So I had the son of Hamas. I had him. I had I had the president of Israel. I've had at the time it was Elon Levy, who was the spokesperson for Israel. I had a couple of IDF soldiers on. I've had a lot of people. Wow, now that I think about it, yeah, a lot of people.
And I think that is what makes it so powerful, like being willing to risk the reputation and credibility that you establish over 300 plus episodes, right? Like, there's some risk in losing part of the audience. How do you feel about that?
I lost a lot of people. My downloads went down a lot, and I lost a lot of I lost a lot of followers. I lost a lot of listeners. I lost a lot of sponsorship. But you know what? That's not going to stop me from doing what I believe is right. There's a moral compass involved here. And by the way, everything came back. Everything just like, I think that, yeah, I lost followers, but I gained some that I otherwise wouldn't have had, right? Because of the Jewish stuff. I lost sponsors, but guess what? If you don't like Jews, I'm not interested in having you as my sponsor. So bye. And I had other ones who just like are are not looking at me and looking, oh, her content's this, that, the other. And if you live your life based around how things about the external validation, like how it hits your bank account, you're going to make decisions that are not geared and aligned with who you are. And so I decided a long time ago in my life, that's not how I want to live my life. Yeah, did I take a hit? Yeah. But it came, like I said, it came back in other ways. And if it didn't, I still have faith that it will in other ways. And I'm okay with it. Like I have confidence in myself because I know that, like, at the end of the day, no one's going to do my job better than somebody else. Like, that's how much I believe in it. And so if this person doesn't want to work with me because of that, that's okay. I'll find somebody else because I know what my value is too. So that's why.
And I think it's so important for people to understand that, like, it you said it, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And there has to be some conviction in the things that we do. Otherwise, like, who are we and what are we representing? And this cause is definitely, I mean, I served 2 years Israeli military infantry combat, and so did all my siblings.
Are you Israeli though?
No, I volunteered.
You volunteered. Wow.
And my grandparents on my mother's side, both Holocaust survivors. And I'd done March of the Living and, visiting Israel 100 times. Like, it studied the Holocaust in high school and college. And I took very specific courses geared towards it and read Viktor Frankl's book. I interviewed Dr. Edith Eger also.
Amazing. Wait, how old are you, Jonathan?
34.
What kind of lawyer are you, by the way? I didn't hear you said something, but
Formerly criminal law. I was a special victims prosecutor for 3 years in the Bronx, and now I'm an associate general counsel at a private company in the semiconductor industry, so in-house.
where did you go to law school?
I went to Muhlenberg College for undergrad in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and I went to Turo Law for a 4-year JD MBA to do that in conjunction with their business school.
Got it. Okay. You can cut that part out. I was just curious. Okay.
Yeah. So it's on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Part of how we go about following our curiosity, right? My education, my influence, my environment. There's a lot of things that have shaped my identity. And I found that through going through the deep dive on who you are and what you bring to the table, following your curiosity has been a common theme as well that led you to start a sneaker company, write a column for Forbes, write a book, start a podcast, almost start a TV show, all these different things. Why is curiosity so important and how can people cultivate it?
I think curiosity is one of the most under-indexed, overlooked character trait someone can have. I think that curiosity is the breeding ground for opportunity and and relationships. I think that if you don't have if you're not learning and growing, then you're basically dying. Number one. Number two, how do you know what's available to you if you don't have the curiosity to ask questions and find out? So I am very curious naturally. Like, I'll ask a bazillion questions and I have I can't even control it. Like just now, like I was asking, which school did you go to? What kind of law do you do? Da, da, da. Like, cause I have like a genuine interest. Now, the truth of the matter is I'm not expecting most people to have that kind of curiosity level, but it's the same thing as boldness, right? If you don't, if you're not curious naturally, I tell people to try to harness their curiosity because that is how they're going to find opportunities. That's how they're going to find connections. That's how they're going to be better at networking. And that's how they're going to cultivate relationships better because people are interested more than anything in themselves. So if you can ask people questions about themselves and they can talk about themselves and you can, in that process, you hear and find out all these things that you have no idea. Like, it leads you on all these different tangents. It can be so fundamental and so foundational to where your life goes. So I tell people, here's a little cheat sheet, right? When you meet somebody, ask them 5 questions about themselves. And even if you're not interested, feign interest. and try to remember what those are. Because I would pretty much guarantee out of if you could do that to 5 people, you're going to get one or two great nuggets of information or things that you had no idea about that you may take that they'll take you down another path of road. That could be, by the way, that's not just on your career. That's career. it could be hobbies, it could be travel, it could be anything. And it has been, to me, one of my superpowers in terms of my success is just the ability to cultivate the curiosity, to really kind of lean in on it. Because I know when I was a kid, people would always like give me a hard time, like, stop asking so many questions, stop being so nosy, blah, blah, blah. That's what I hear. Stop being so nosy. Too bad. I am nosy. And I kind of like, I'm okay with it at this point. It helps me more than it hurts me. And like I said, if people are a two in curiosity, they can build up to 5 or 6. It will do them exceptionally well.
I've noticed the curiosity in interviews that you've done with Simon Sinek or Jordan Belfort. It's pretty cool to get to a level where you have access to people like yourself, right? Like, I've got no business speaking to some of the people that I've interviewed on this podcast in over 130 episodes. And it's been like a production, an education, a eye-opening experience in so many ways. Like, I had a mentor at the DA's office who always, it stays with me like forever. He said, like, you have to have some intellectual curiosity. You got to cultivate your intellectual curiosity. And it stayed with me because when you're asking a witness questions, like, you have to understand what happened, the sequence of events of how it unfolded, and be curious about what they're experiencing now so you could tell their story and advocate on their behalf, and also discover the truth about what actually transpired, right? Because, like, you're representing like a government entity, but also, like, to a degree, what happened, and you don't want to misrepresent that because that could be very bad for all parties involved, right? So when it comes to mindset, perspective, and strategies, in the few minutes that we have left here, would love for you to share this strategy that you have about the 10% target.
Mhm.
How has and how can people implement your strategy of the 10% target?
Oh, okay. So the 10% target is this mindset and this philosophy that really live and stand behind, which is this idea that you have to make 10 attempts at whatever you want most in life. And the truth is, most people don't even make one attempt. Almost nobody makes 2 attempts. So if you're somebody who's going to make more than that attempt, the chances of you succeeding just have gone up 100-fold or tenfold, depending on which one you like to say. And the other idea is that, it teaches you on that path. Two things happen. Either, like I said, either you will get the goal that you're intending to do, or another opportunity will present itself that you didn't even know existed by just going down that path. And the other part of what I really love about this whole concept is it helps people get comfortable with the idea of failing, because you're priming your brain for learning resilience and learning how to fail, right? So if you tell yourself, okay, I need to make 10 attempts, you're already like your mind is already like put in that reframe where, okay, so if you try and you don't succeed, all right, you got 9 more to go, and then 8 more to go. Like, you're kind of knowing what's happening, so you're not as likely to, I guess, stay down, because your goal and the whole philosophy and program, or I guess what you call it, like, I guess it's like kind of like the cheat sheet, is to actually make 10 attempts. So it trains your brain while also giving you like kind of like some kind of system to work within, so you can have success with either that or something else.
There's a question that I pose to all my guests that I'd like to take a second to pose to you as we round this thing out. If the future version of yourself from 10 years from now were to fly in and offer you some advice, assuming she's in that ideal spot, what do you think she would say to you?
I think that she would say, "Slow down and take a moment to smell the flowers." I think, I think the roses. Was that thing, just like was that is that the because I think a lot of times what happens is we are moving so fast. I'm moving so fast, paced all the time, and I go from one thing to another thing that I don't even stop and appreciate where I've gotten. And I think that's a lot of people, especially in today's time. Everything is technology, everything's moving so quickly. You kind of just go on autopilot and you don't take a moment to breathe and be like, you know what? Wow, I kind of did that. Like, I interviewed the president of Israel. Like, that's pretty cool. And like right after I did it, I was like, okay, on to the next thing because I had a schedule to do like so many different things, right? But that's been a lot with my life. Like, a lot of things in my life have been really outstanding. Like, people call me the Forrest Gump of, the girl version of Forrest Gump, because I just like I stumble upon these opportunities and things. But I say stumble, but really it's because it's like I've strategically stumbled, right? And I don't even recognize like how cool and amazing it is. Like, when I have all these people walking into my house, that I've interviewed, like everyone from like Tony Robbins or Mark Cuban to Jack Dorsey, like all these massive people. I'm like, they're like wandering into my backyard with my kids' trampoline. Like, they've got to jump over a trampoline and a ballet dancing mat, to get to my office. And it's like, this is really crazy, or like, it's just so many different random things in my life. And yeah, it's or like Musab, like was at my house playing basketball with my 11-year-old, or like Dennis Rodman's coming over to show my kid how to play basketball, or Michael Phelps is swimming with my kid. Like, I can go on all these crazy things, right? And it's like in the moment, I'm like, wow, this is so cool. But then like really fast, like soon later, I'm like, okay, what, and I don't remember, I forget of all these things until, you know. So if anything, I think that like it's really important to take a minute and just realize like people should have more grace with themselves. So I should have more grace with myself and be like, you know what? You did okay, kid. Like, not bad from a small town in Canada. And I think that's what my older self would say to me.
This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for your time. Please let the audience know where they can keep up with your journey.
They can subscribe to my podcast, Habits and Hustle. They can follow me on socials at The Real Jen Cohen. They can sign up for my newsletter at jennifercohen.com. They can buy my book, Bigger, Better, Bolder. And I think that's good.
Awesome. Jen, thank you so much. Until the next one.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Thank you for having me.